Natural Scene Designer is a piece of software designed to take digital elevation models and render them from a certain perspective in a photorealistic way. It incorporates aspects of terrain texture, lighting, and atmospheric properties to create oblique maps that look like views from a mountaintop or a low elevation aircraft. There are two main windows in the Natural Scene Designer interface. The first is this map window, which shows a top-down or planimetric view of the landscape. The camera view over here shows a perspective view based on where the camera is located and focused, and you can see the cone of the camera angle right here. This camera view is just a preview of the scene that will be rendered when you create a final version of the map. To render the scene, you go up to the Render menu up here and click Render Picture. And this will give you some options for rendering, and if I hit Render, you'll see it takes a little while to ray trace the image, but it gives you a much higher quality version of this that you can save as an image file. You can also make adjustments to the scene by going to the Scene menu. I'm not going to save this for the time being. So I come up to the Scene menu, I can go to Terrain Settings and then change the colors that it's using in order to put what amount to hypsometric tints on this landscape, although it does sort of create this random patchiness of rock and grass as it makes that transition from low elevation to high elevation. But you can add in another color transition, so if I was to select snow here, then it would put a third little caret there, and I can change any of these colors just by double clicking on them. And so I could get pretty crazy by adding weird colors, but I'll stick with the sort of generic earth tones here. Click OK. You can also make other adjustments to, let's say, the sky. So here I can make changes to the number of clouds, the types of clouds, their altitude, maybe the speed at which they're moving if we were making an animation rather than just a still render. I can change the color of the sky, the amount of haze, the brightness of the sun, and there are even some presets here for things like the sunset that will automatically change the types of clouds and the color of the sky. Okay. I can also change settings for water. So if I had put water into my scene, I could change the texture of the surface of the water with the wave height. I could make that water a different color. I could specify a depth so that it would look denser in deeper areas. And so if I come back up here and render my picture with these new settings, you can see I set this for sunset, and now I've got a slightly hazier and pinker hue to the lighting of my scene. You can also make specific adjustments to your view or record the exact location of the camera by opening the Settings window, which is up here under Window and then Settings. So here you can see the direction that my camera is facing, its pitch, its bank, the lens focal point, which right now is mimicking a 76.3mm lens, and then its position and its altitude above the ground. And if I pan around using these arrows, you can see that it's changing the pitch down here. Likewise, I can physically move the camera, and that's changing its position. I can also change the pitch of the camera to angle it up or down right here, and I can even bank the camera, although this may have the effect of making your viewers a bit seasick, so I'm going to leave it right at 0. And as I said, if you want to make fine adjustments, you can come in here and actually type in those settings in order to get them exactly where you want. If you want to remember the exact location of your camera, you can copy and paste these easting and northing positions, so you can put a camera right back where it was the last time you used the program. You can also save a Natural Scene Designer file by coming up here to File and saying Save As, and this will save a proprietary NSD file that will save the position of your camera. It'll actually save the terrain right in the file, and all your settings that you've applied to that. You can also use Natural Scene Designer to make shaded relief maps or also planimetric oblique maps. So if you come up here to the Render menu again, you can say Render Shaded Relief, and that'll open up a window where you can specify the hypsometric tints that it will use when making that shaded relief. If you don't want it to use all these tints, then you can just simply uncheck most of these breaks. So say I just wanted it to use gray, then I could use this gray scale right there, and I could preview it, and that would just be a base gray hillshade map. I can also use a variety of preset palettes, so this Atlas 4 palette gives me this set of hypsometric tints, or I can just use a 15% gray palette, which will make it 15% gray all over. I can also change the blending and the shading amounts. Basically, there are just a lot more knobs to turn in terms of the way that this renders a shaded relief map than there are with ArcMap's hill shading tool, so it can be a really useful tool for having more subtle control over the way that a hillshade is rendered. You can also make a planimetric oblique map in Natural Scene Designer, which is something you can't do at all in Arc. If I come up to Render again, and then say Render Planimetric Oblique Relief Map, it'll give me some options again for my hypsometric tints. I have the same palettes that I can use, the same shading amount, and I can specify a pitch for the sort of pseudo camera that will render the obliqueness of the terrain. If I hit render here, it'll work for a little while, and you can sort of get a sense for what planimetric oblique means. This is not a perspective map, so you're not going to be seeing any sort of vanishing point or horizon line, but at the same time you will see that the mountains sort of appear 3D. The terrain is planimetric, so the bases of these mountains are in the right place, but the peaks have sort of been pushed backwards in order to render them as 3D objects.